stroke that in. Now this is very, very light. I painted through the trees. I must have some extra paint on the brush, but that's okay. I painted through the trees there. I'm going to continue, as I mentioned before, bringing that color down into the water area because I do want to be able to show reflection in the water of everything that's going on around the stream, including reflections of that warm light from the background. Blue and some cerulean blue back in the background. Again, I want it very light because that area is supposed to be the lightest area in the painting. Blue. I'm going to indicate where there may be some standing trees back there just by putting these kinds of vertical strokes. And since I've got some of that back there, I'm going to, again, indicate some of that in the stream down here with just these few little strokes that give us a hint that something is being reflected. Kind of pure cobalt blue, and I'm going to mingle it back here along this snowbank. My cerulean blue as well, just to get some color variety. Variety is so important actually in paintings. But it's going to help me darken and neutralize these blues, and that's really what I'm looking for. My raw sienna up in here. Raw sienna really does neutralize both cobalt blue and cerulean blue, and it's very useful for showing a little bit of warmth. You can see now that it looks like maybe there's a little bit of warm light catching just the ridge of that snowbank right there. Drop them down into this wet area and start lifting out what could look like tree trunks. And that's why I don't get too specific. I sort of like to let my eye and my thinking guide me at this point. Since it's nice and wet, I am able to mix and mingle colors in if I need to do that, if I need to make a change to something, need to make an addition. I don't have to do them all now, and in fact it's probably a good time to stop for the lower areas along this bank just to show that it's a bit darker, to raise, that is darken the value that's down here, just to make sure I get that mid value that I really want eventually. And even in the water area, if I drop some darker spots where kind of vertically below where I've got some of the taller trees, it'll help us start to see a little bit of a reflection of those individual tree trunks in the water as well. And it's not what we expect on snow, but it's a nice sort of change from those violets that we've got over there on the other bank. And now I get in with some cobalt blue, which is a bit darker. I'm going to get up on the tree trunks that I've got here, and then I'll get that in. Now you don't have to do this all at once. Some people would probably layer this. They would dry what they had and then they would layer it again, and you could certainly do it that way. I find that the color stays fresher if it's done like this, and way more transparent. Plus we get this nice flow that we expect to see in watercolor. The burnt scarlet, and I'm going to put it up here in the trees, kind of warming those up a little bit. I'm going to try to show where there's maybe a little bit of mud, dirt showing out of the banks of these two closer snowbanks on the edge of the stream. And by putting that in and then mingling some cobalt blue on it, I get a really good dark that looks dark like it's the muddy bank of a stream showing through some of the snow. Fill it in. Actually, I'll probably paint right through these trees. It looks like that bank goes in behind this bank over here. I can go here and with the side of the brush I can do things like this, which start to show that there may be something going on over there. Maybe it's trees, weeds, whatever it is. We see something over there. We start to see the texture that tells us there's something over there. So we're going to get that in. Go back and get some of that color a little bit thicker this time and actually delineate some of the tree trunks. Right here, right here. Kind of the same way I did on this bank. Picking up what's there, I know it's going to be color that is in harmony with the color I already have on the painting because it's the same colors I've been using. Very, very dark. So I'm going to go back now with essentially just another layer of the same colors, the burnt scarlet and the cobalt blue. When I get to the bottom, I'm actually with some cobalt blue, I'm going to soften the edges of those trees. That'll help them sit down into that snow that is on the bank of the stream there, and this will help those sit down in there and really become part of that same shape. I'm going to get some of that on this smaller trunk as well, very carefully. It's a little bit lighter. And when I get up here, in this area of the bank here. Now I do want it to stay blue because I want that to be, I want it to look like snow, and the blue really is a great symbol for the snow that's in shade or shadow. We've managed to really darken the value pretty well on the trees, not quite as much in the bank, but I think we're okay where we are. There's certainly a nice difference between this area and that area at this point. And let's get that up in here where we know this is supposed to be darker. Right through here, and then I think we said here there was going to be some of that, and up on this bank I'm going to mingle some cobalt blue. I got some really thick cobalt blue up here to sort of connect that dark area of the water and of this side of the stream to that side of the stream, and then some of my burnt scarlet. As I come forward, I'm getting more of that dry brush stroke by sort of working with the side of the brush rather than the tip, and that just creates a little bit of sparkle on the water. I'm going to bring its base down into the snow a little bit farther down than it appeared to be before. I'm going to bring that one down. I think I'll leave those two sitting up there, bring this one down a little bit. So that it looks like we've got some trees sitting down in the bank on this side, not all along the ridge there. One of those small things that you can do that really adds some realism to your painting. Maybe I'll bring one of these smaller ones down, this one perhaps. And now that I've done that, I can start showing some branches off of at least the bigger trees. And then with a clean brush that I've cleaned out in my clean water that's blotted, I soften this up. I want those trees also to sit down in the snow, look like they're sitting in the snow. I'm getting some of my burnt scarlet and cobalt blue mixed together, and I'm going to run that kind of in certain areas across the bottom edge of that bank. So a little bit of reflection, probably with a lighter value, but a little bit of reflection from the trees back up there. I don't want to disturb too much of the nice warm glow in that water back there, but I do want to show a little bit of horizontal reflection. I'm going to do something similar here. There's supposed to be a rock, a really dark color, and I'm going to use that to create what looks like maybe a rock here, maybe another one there, the bottom edge of this bank. I'm using the corner of my 1/4 inch flat to sort of get that edge at the bottom broken up a little bit because there's snow there. We don't know what exactly is there, maybe rocks. Some marks here on the edge of the bank that could be, again, the edge of rocks, shady side of a snow bank, and cobalt blue. And with my rigger, doing the same thing, some kind of rough-edged marks. Maybe this is a twig that's laying down on the ground, has fallen over. Often when you do this, or when I do this in classes, folks say, gee, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure what to do, I'm not sure if this is the right thing, I'm not sure where to put these marks. And that's probably true, but if you're making marks that go with the contour that we know is on that bank, that is, it really comes down from above and diagonally the strokes sort of head down towards the surface of the stream, they're going to look right. They're going to just look like it's part of the bank and it looks like something is there. Maybe here's some weeds. This time I'm using my medium round, but I'm using it with very thick paint and a very dry brush to get the same sort of marks that I got over here. Bottom of a rock, there's a rock here. Notice that I'm using dry brush strokes rather than nice sort of determined hard edges at the bottoms of these rocks. I want there to look like there's a little bit of shimmer, maybe there's some reflection, something's going on there. We see an edge, bottom edge that is, of those rocks, but we don't see it quite so firmly. I've got some of that red color that we put in early on. I'm going to make this one the bottom edge of a rock. And again, some of these dry brush marks that follow essentially the direction and the contour of that bank. Looks like there's maybe a bottom edge of the dirt here, not really a rock, but some of the bank, the dirt on the bank is showing from underneath the cover of snow. That's what I'm putting in here. I'm going to do something similar over here. I'm actually going to layer some cobalt blue over this to diminish kind of what I've got in these browns, and then I'll go put some of that down in here. I like to put a good dark down at the bottom edge of my paintings as a sort of a stepping stone into the painting, and that's what this really serves as. Then with my rigger and that same combination, I'm going to put in those weeds and branches that were sitting here on this bank that I did draw in. I think they're in the drawing layout. Now these marks really have to be pretty horizontal because they're on the horizontal surface of the water. Like a lot of these marks we've been doing at this stage of the painting, these are going to be kind of strokes that are a little bit raggedy edged. I want to edge actually at the bottom of the bank right here. And then I want some of that right along here to show where there's those dark areas of whether it's dirt or rock that are showing. I do want to show that in the water here. And down here some really dark reflections of these trees that are up here on the bank. And just bring one big kind of stroke of it across here, as if there's some sort of ripple or reflection across the whole surface at that point. I think that's good. And then I want to do the same thing right in here, another one just at the edge of our vision, right down here at the bottom. And one more of those right up in here to show that there's this dark area of that bank going on and that it's reflecting also in the water. Maybe a little bit of this. Not too much. Water is very reflective. It's usually pretty light, and you want it to stay light and airy and look like it's moving. And now I'm looking at the painting. I do think we could do with a little bit of kind of marks in here as well to break up a little bit of that area. And actually at this point I think we're nearly done. The one last thing is actually to get a little bit more texture and activity on this bank. By using my rigger with some very thick paint and just indicating where there might be some weeds or brush sticking up out of the bank itself. And I'm using that same dry brush technique but with the rigger, maybe a little bit over here. This is also one of those things that can be overdone, so don't. Just try to be kind of reserved about it. Judicious, I like to say. Get a couple marks that show a little bit of activity right here. Maybe a couple weeds there. I'm going to darken up at least one or two of these weeds that's coming out of the ground and make sure they have a good overlap on that distant piece of land and over the water. There, I think we're done. So we've got this, what I think is a nice little painting of this winter stream flowing through these dark woods. We started with a value sketch for this painting, and now we want to, it's not quite dry, but I do want to make sure that we've got really what we intended, which was a light area in the background, a middle value area in the middle ground, and then this dark area in the foreground. I actually do think we have that, but we can certainly check it with our value scale. It's easy to see that this area that we intended to be light is actually light back in here. And then this area is certainly darker than that. And let's check and see what kind of values we have in there. Looks like it's this or slightly darker. It's certainly not as dark as that. So we have some very light areas kind of in the middle of these two, back here in the background. And right here in this middle ground we have values that really are sort of between these two values, the second and third step. And then here in the foreground we have certainly that step. Certain areas we've got this step. Down here in the water it's even that step. So we have three nice values, one that sort of begins here, another one there. The third one really sort of mingles in between these two. Nice visual steps of value where we can certainly see what's darker and what's lighter without really having to think too much about it. If you followed along, I hope you came out with a really nice painting.